we've got to get smarter about how we deal with the economic threat. And for people who say, oh, well, you know, that disrupts the market. China has disrupted the market. China is not a free market economy. We tried. We let them into the World Trade Organization. We sent our businesses over there. We made trade deals. They are a controlled top-down economy. You will never compete and win against them unless you take back the means of production.
Right now, if you look at Western governments, legacy automakers, or financial analysts, they're all pretty much obsessed with one single narrative, and that's the Chinese electric vehicle invasion. We literally hear endless debates about EV tariffs, battery supply chains, and software-defined mobility. But there is a massive structural blind spot in global economics right now, because while the West was busy building walls to keep out Chinese EVs, a diverted flood of traditional gas-powered automobiles has quietly slipped out the back door, and it's systematically taking over the global market. So,
I'll just give you an example. Okay, I would say that this process began in 2020. Okay, and the first sector that it affected was renewable energy.
Yep.
Okay, and in 2020 to 2025, today, in those 5 years, not just solar and wind and all of that, the Chinese were very successful globally, also in automobiles. And let me kind of explain how big that is. Okay, the auto industry is a pillar industry of the world. Okay, a pillar industry. Okay, and post World War II, it took 3 countries 75 years to dominate that pillar industry. Okay, Germany, Japan, and the US. And in 5 years, we uprooted the entire thing.
Yeah.
And it's never going back.
Hands down.
Okay. 5 years compared with 75 years in a pillar industry in the world. Okay. That's auto.
okay, let's dive straight into this data point because it is completely paradigm shifting. While the media relentlessly pushed this EV myth, a staggering 78.7% of China's record-breaking passenger vehicle exports in 2024 were actually internal combustion engine vehicles. Yeah, gas cars. We were so distracted by the shiny new electric transition that we completely missed the petrol market being overtaken right under our noses. So if Europe and the United States are busy throwing up 100% tariffs on Chinese vehicles, where exactly are all these millions of gas cars going? Well, the data shows Chinese gas cars are absolutely flooding into Russia, the Middle East, Mexico, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. The reality is, Western EV tariffs are effectively a paper tiger on the global scale. Why? Because the vast majority of the world simply doesn't have the charging infrastructure or the grid capacity to support an immediate electric transition. The global south still runs on gas, and China is effortlessly stepping right into this vacuum, providing affordable mobility to regions that Western legacy automakers have historically kind of treated as secondary markets.
And the reason they're winning so decisively in these markets comes down to pricing. The estimated average export price for a Chinese vehicle sits right between $13,000 and $19,000. Now compare that to Germany, where the average sits well above $45,000. For a middle-class family in Mexico, South Africa, or Thailand, it's not even a choice anymore. Traditional automakers simply can't afford to build cars this cheaply, especially not with the massive supply chain and scale advantages that China currently wields.
But here's the kicker. It's not just that they're cheap. It's a relentless cost-to-feature disruption. Chinese automakers aren't just exporting stripped-down penalty boxes. They're delivering vehicles with premium, massive screens, advanced AI-driven digital ecosystems, lush interiors, and incredibly high-efficiency hybrid tech. They're essentially offering luxury-level features at economy prices. We're talking routinely pricing their vehicles 20 to 40% below equivalent Japanese or Korean rivals. It's a value proposition that is proving absolutely irresistible to buyers across the emerging world.
Now this is where the story gets a slightly cynical, deeply ironic twist. Because if you think the legacy Western automakers are just innocent victims in this whole global takeover, we really need to look at who is actually building these cars. For decades, foreign brands operated in China through joint ventures, or JVs, basically trading their engineering know-how for market access. But as domestic Chinese brands conquered their own home market, those JVs started collapsing. SAIC-GM, for example, saw their domestic sales plunge from over 1.4 million down to just 435,000. But SIC's exports? They jumped to over 1 million. Foreign brands have lost a third of their market share in China since 2020, but as a collective, they're now exporting nearly 1 million units out of the country.
And this right here is the profound irony of the whole situation. Legacy brands like Volkswagen, General Motors, and BMW are now actively using their massive underutilized Chinese factories as global export hubs. To avoid just bleeding money on idle plants, Western brands are utilizing China's low-cost supply chain to build cars and ship them to places like Latin America and Southeast Asia. By doing this, they're effectively competing against their very own home market factories. They are keeping the Chinese industrial engine roaring simply because they have no other financially viable choice.
So we have to assess what this means for the future landscape, because what we're witnessing is an existential threat to traditional automotive powerhouses. It goes way beyond a temporary market fluctuation. Just let the sheer weight of this projected data speak for itself. By 2030, projections show China controlling an astonishing 43.6% of all global ICE vehicle exports. They absolutely haven't abandoned the internal combustion engine. They're simply perfecting it for the rest of the world while heavily pushing EVs in the West. It is literally a masterclass in a dual-track strategy. They are dominating the electric future while systematically squeezing out the Japanese, Koreans, and Germans from the massive cash-rich combustion markets of the global South. Automotive expert Michael Dunn actually summarized the relentless readiness of Chinese automakers perfectly. He said, if the door were open tonight at midnight, by 4 a.m., they'd already be setting up shop. They are poised, highly capitalized, and aggressively ambitious. Tariffs in the US and Europe might slow them down temporarily, sure, but it's kind of like trying to stop a flood with a chain-link fence. The water simply diverts to where there is the least resistance, eventually engulfing the rest of the globe. Which leaves us with this final lingering thought to unpack. The traditional automotive giants are currently fighting a brutal two-front war. They are losing the technological race on electric vehicles, and at the exact same time, they're being utterly undercut on cost and features in the traditional gasoline market. As they continue to bleed market share globally on both of these fronts, we really have to ask, can the legacy auto industry as we know it even survive this decade? Take a moment to really think about what that means for the global economy.